The council meeting of October 6, 2020 will now please come to order. Due to this meeting being a virtual meeting, council is asking if anyone who would like to address council that is participating through the computer, please use the chat feature now to let Clerk Massarolo know you have a comment, and you will be called on during the comment portion of the meeting. If you are calling on a phone or do not have access to the chat feature, we will give directions during the public comment portion of our meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mrs. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Broussard?
Present.
Mr. Glassburn?
Here.
Ms. Seaman?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Limpert?
Present.
Mr. Schuman?
Here.
Ms. Williamson?
Here. If there are no additions or corrections, the council meeting minutes of September 15th, 2020 are approved as written. The following legislation will be considered for suspension of the rules this evening: Ordinance 2020-101, Resolution 2020-105, Ordinance 2020-106, and Ordinance 2020-107. Mayor Kennedy, do you have a report this evening?
Madam President, I do. Thank you. This past Sunday, Springvale Pavilion was happy to welcome Fox News anchor and executive editor Martha McCullum. Martha also serves as co-anchor of the network news division Democracy 2020 election coverage. She did a pre-recorded open-air interview conversation with 5 female Cleveland voters. It aired during the pre-debate coverage. And Halloween Trek at the Rec is scheduled for Friday, October 23rd from 6 to 8. This is a socially distanced, family-friendly event where residents stay in their cars. Deadline to register is October 19th. And Halloween Trick or Treat is scheduled for Saturday, October 31st from 6 to 8. Residents are encouraged to follow the Responsible Restart Ohio guidance, which has been posted on our website and shared via text in the monthly e-newsletter. An update on construction projects. The ice rink project will wrap up at the end of the month, and the rink will be open for use in November. City Hall Public Health project continues on schedule. Country Club Boulevard is complete except for the replacement of a light pole damaged by a motor vehicle collision. And Walking Path itself is complete, and the service department will perform restoration work on the lawn next week. And just to, in human resources, just to announce some retirements from our police department. We have quite a few of them. Paul Miller, police officer, retired 30 years. John Downs, police officer, retired 25 years. Mary Harwood, police secretary, 22 years. Bob Bryceff, police officer, 30 years. And Ron Cox, police captain, 33 years. And Police Lieutenant Eric Morgan will be sworn in as police captain as of tomorrow morning. And Madam President, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Law Director Garreau, do you have a report this evening?
Thank you, Madam President, and good evening to Council. A couple things. First, House Bill 242 was approved by the Senate. That is the legislation that's off to the governor concerning plastic bags and the ability of local entities to issue regulations concerning what they refer to as, it's not plastic bags, because they don't stop at that, they go further. So they've called them auxiliary containers. So auxiliary containers are bags, cans, cups, food, beverage, service item, containers, kegs, bottles, any other packaging that's designed for single use, made of cloth, paper, plastic, foam, extended plastic, so pretty much anything. So they've decided that there's going to be, for at least 12 months, there's going to be a prohibition from any entity, either through home rule or township, from being able to enact any legislation regarding that. So it doesn't seem to say we can't have our legislation regarding a recycling program, but it certainly needs a further look at that. So that's what they've been up to in Columbus. We can expect to see the governor sign that. I haven't heard anything about him opposing it. And the nationwide opioid litigation, as an update on that, there was a certified negotiating class that the Judge Polster put together in federal court that was designed to bring everyone together to the table under one heading for purposes of trying to see if any type of a resolution could be reached. He ordered that. That was appealed, and the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals has said, no, you may not do that. So that kind of sets back the idea of negotiated class settlement. Nevertheless, there's a great number of Ohio communities have voluntarily agreed to work together, including North Olmsted, toward trying to find consensus toward a resolution, settlement terms. But again, much like past litigation, I don't expect to see this moving along too quickly anytime soon. So it's probably going to be a matter of many months, if not years, before we see some sort of resolution on the opioid litigation. So that's where that stands. I just wanted to bring you up to date on that, and thank you. That ends my report.
Thank you. Finance Director Copper, do you have a report this evening?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. The one item I wanted to bring to your attention is that today we received a news alert from RETA, the Regional Income Tax Agency. They wanted to notify us and all their members that they're working to develop a model that will assist members in projecting the potential revenue impact of workers continuing to work from home on a permanent basis after the state of emergency has ended. These impacts include the loss of revenue in each community from reduced employer withholding, and for some communities, the potential gain in revenue from residents working at home and paying the full tax rate of the resident's community. This data will be useful for us to estimate the potential impact to a community of days out. Refunds will be required, which is where the entrant rule of 20 days, they have to work in the community before they start collecting. We can charging them income tax. So there will be a separate projection for each municipality based on 2018 data. And I'm looking forward to that because, as you are aware, there is a court case in Columbus regarding this issue. So it would be nice to know what our potential impact would be. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Moving into council committee reports, the Committee of the Whole met twice since our last meeting, once on September 22nd, 2020 from 8:53 till 9:37 p.m. and then again today, the 6th of October from 6:45 until 7:44 p.m. Present were all of council, and the main topics that were discussed at both of those Committee of the Whole meetings were CARES Act funding and council accessibility options, including purchasing the appropriate equipment for council to begin streaming our council meetings. And that concludes my report. Councilman Broussard, Chairman of the Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Williamson, Chairwoman of the Building, Zoning, and Development Committee, do you have a report this evening?
I do, Madam President. Thank you. The Building, Zoning, and Development Committee met on September 22nd at 7:02 p.m. Present were committee members Williamson, Limpert, and Schuman, Council President Jones, Council members Broussard, Glassburn, Heeman, and Kelly, Mayor, Law Director, our Human Resources Director, Planning Director, and guests. The only item on the agenda was ordinance number 2020-106, which is an ordinance amending and reestablishing Chapter 167.99 of the Administrative Code, entitled Composition and Organization of the Department of Human Resources, in order to implement organization changes within the department and to create the new position of Building Department Coordinator and declaring an emergency. Director Gallo had explained that this ordinance would create the position of Building Department Coordinator And this ordinance would also then modify the organizational chart to reflect this change, as well as reallocating responsibilities for the position. After discussion, it was requested that the organizational chart be changed, rather than reading building department coordinator full-time and or up to 2 part-time, that it was building coordinator, 1 building coordinator full-time or up to 2 part-time. And that change has been made, and it was in our agenda packets for tonight. So this, based on that change, the committee recommended a vote of 3-0 to recommend approval to all of council. And Madam President, I believe at this time I will make a motion to amend Ordinance 2020-106 to reflect the change in Exhibit B of the organizational chart, and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to amend 2020-106 made by Councilwoman Williamson, seconded by Councilman Limpert. Roll call, please.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman, Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Schuman.
Yes.
2020-106 was amended with a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilman Schuman, Chairman of the Finance Committee, do you have a report this evening?
I do. Finance Committee of Council met Tuesday, September 22nd at 8:30. Present were all of council, including committee members Schuman, Broussard, and Kelly. Council President, Mayor, Director of Human Resources, Director of Planning and Community Development, Director of Law. On the agenda was 2020-102, a resolution directing the fiscal officer of Cuyahoga County to pay to the city of North Olmsted, Ohio during the year 2021, all money due and owing said city from any collection source. This is something we do pro forma every year. We have to ask the county for our part of the taxes. Committee voted to recommend to full council 3-0. Next, we discussed 2020-103, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $1,415,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to provide funds to pay part of the city's portion of the costs of improving Brook Park Road between certain termini in cooperation with the Department of Transportation of the state of Ohio by grading, draining, curbing, reconstructing, and rehabilitating the pavement face and adjusting, constructing, and reconstructing catch basins, curbs, curb ramps, manholes, and utility valve and monument boxes where necessary, preparing the surface and resurfacing and providing decorative lighting and landscaping in each case, together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto. So basically what this does is allows the finance director to sell notes in anticipation of the sale of bonds for next year for this project. Committee voted 3-0 to recommend. We followed with a brief discussion of 2020-107. This is an ordinance to establish the positions of Division of Building Coordinator full-time and part-time and corresponding compensation for each, and otherwise restate the compensation rates and descriptions for various administrative and legislative personnel for the years 2018, 2019, 2020, and declaring an emergency. This is the financial end of the ordinance discussed in BZA 2020-106. This allows for between $20 and $40 an hour for a part-time building coordinator and between $1,600 and $3,200 biweekly for a full-time building coordinator. These are pay scales. And this passed committee 3-0. Additionally, we discussed 2020-101. This is the transfer ordinance. This is an ordinance to make and transfer appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the city of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency. The ordinance included a handful of changes to this year's budget, the most striking of which included $51,000 from the Division of Building salaries to contractual services to cover the acting assistant building commissioner and plans examiner. Over $250,000 decrease in expenses in the Parks and Rec due to all the COVID cut programs. Also, we received an additional $381,622 from the second round of the CARES Act, bringing our total as of the 22nd to $1,144,868. The finance director felt comfortable that we can put some of this toward benefits, $100,000, with the rest going to materials and supplies, $190,000, contractual services, $134,000, and the capital outlay, the $720,000, this being for the improvements to City Hall and our other buildings to keep everyone who uses those facilities safer. This may seem a little confusing after the discussion we had earlier today, but again, this was as of the 22nd. Lastly, $10,000 was taken out of this Department of Service and put into capital outlay to install the much needed ventilation fan for the fleet garage. With suspension, 2020-101 was voted recommended 3-0. At this time, I would ask that we amend 2020-101. This is based on the changes that were sent in our packets, including the third round of COVID funds, which is all going to go to wages and benefits, and then 2 minor transfers. But at this time, I ask to amend 2020-101, and I ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to amend ordinance 2020-101 made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman, Mr. Glassburn.
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-101 has been amended with a vote of 7-0.
That concludes my report. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilman Limpert, Chairman of the Streets and Transportation Committee, do you have a report this evening?
I do have a report this evening, Madam President. Thank you. The Streets and Transportation Committee met on September 22nd. Present were committee members Limpert, Glassburn, and Kelly, council members Broussard, Schuman, Williamson, Jones, and Heeman, the mayor and planning director. On the agenda was Resolution 2020-104, which was a resolution authorizing the mayor, director of public service to advertise for bids for the award of a contract to purchase concrete materials and related supplies for the year 2021, as detailed in the specifications on file with the engineer, and authorizing the mayor following approval to contract with the same with the lowest and best bidder. Mayor Kenny noted this is an annual bid process for concrete for small projects is needed. This contract will purchase as needed as opposed to a specific quantity. The motion passed by a vote of 3-0. As a note, the committee agenda had a different description for this, but the correct resolution number. Director of Law considered acceptable that we discussed it during the meeting. Madam President, this concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Heeman, Chairwoman of the Environmental Control Committee, do you have a report this evening?
I have a committee report this evening, but if I may have personal privilege, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to report that the mask project, just a little over 3,800 masks were given away over a period of 4 days, and continuing even now, residents will call and ask for masks. The program was extremely successful. I'd like to thank the North Olmsted City Schools for their participation and help. I would like to also thank Joanne Stores, Joanne Fabrics, for their really just wonderful support and help with the project, and my colleagues, of course, and also let's just not forget Mach, who showed up at the event because there happened to have been a call that came in for Officer DiMatteo to have to respond to at the Joanne store. And, you know, Mach was stealing the show. All of the children in line for masks were just wanting to pet him, and graciously, as always, he complied. So thank you for that. I'd like to also make a reminder that today early voting started. I do want to say that I went to the Board of Elections at 8:30 this morning. I waited an hour and a half in line to be able to vote. So please, you know, plan enough time, you know, for your voting. I think it's going to be a pretty busy election season. And the line was just blocks and blocks and blocks, even by the time I left. And I thought getting there at 8:30 was early because they open at 8 o'clock. Finally, you may recall that I planted all of those potatoes at the food pantry that Council President Jones gave me. And I must say that obviously, you know, farming isn't my best suit. So I will be making a donation to the food pantry so that they can buy potatoes, because what I did harvest probably would not have fed the Jones family. So, but it was successful. They did grow, so there were some, but yes, so I'll be making that donation in lieu of giving them the potatoes. And thank you very much, Madam President. That's all.
Thank you. Councilman Glassburn, Chairman of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening, Madam Chair, but if I may have a moment of personal privilege, I will not try to top Councilwoman Heeman. Thank you. I have two brief sets of thank yous to make. First is to all of Council, but especially Council President Jones and Councilwoman Heeman on going forward with the mask project. We had a lot of residents in my ward, which is the Far Eastern, that made use of this. There were some folks who came because there was something free, but especially I got to hand out some more masks at the monthly produce giveaway at Maple, beyond the 4 giveaways that we did. And there's a lot of folks that are in need, a lot of folks that are in need for the first time in a long time. And people were very grateful. Secondly, I was called upon a different duty this past week as a juror in the Global Center and then the Justice Center downtown during the day, and had to do my actual business at night. And I wanted to thank Councilpersons Heeman and Kelly for helping out in a couple of constituent matters when I needed to work at night. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kelly, Chairman of the Recreation, Public Parks and Buildings Committee, do you have a report this evening?
Thank you, Madam President. I do. The Recreation, Public Parks and Building Committee met on 9/22 at 8:45, and we discussed 2020-105, a resolution authorizing the mayor to purchase computer products, including desktops from CDW Government LLC at a cost of $47,886.55 through the state purchase program, and further authorizing the mayor to execute all documents necessary to effectuate such purchase and declaring an emergency. All of council was there. The mayor, the finance director, the HR director, planning director, council clerk, guests, and Eric Lundberg discussed this from the IT department. And the gist of it is to purchase 65 new computers and to purchase enough parts to keep those computers working for a few years down the road. And this does not include the police and fire who've already been upgraded. And This was recommended to full council. And with a vote of 2-0, suspension had been discussed, so it was voted 2-0 to recommend to council with suspension. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any letters or communications to come before council at this time?
No, Madam President.
Thank you for joining our meeting tonight. At this time, council will hear comments from the public. Please remember to state your full name and address for our clerk. If you live in a city other than North Olmsted, please state the name of the city you are from. We will start with those who have notified us via chat. Anyone who has not notified us via the chat feature who would like to comment, please unmute your phone and start your comment when prompted. Council Clerk, has anyone notified you they would like to comment at this time?
No, Madam President.
Okay, thank you. If there is anyone on the phone this evening who would like to comment, please address council now. Mr. Sturgeon.
Thank you. Jeff Sturgeon, 3092 West 231. Just a couple of comments I wanted to say. I think that 1.3 million of CARES Act money that could possibly be used for salaries and benefits, I agree with the mayor. I think we should go ahead and use it. As far as possibly paying it back, we were going to have to pay it anyways if we didn't have it, so the money would be there. So it's not like we'd be taking Rob and Peter to pay Paul on that. Another thing I wanted to ask about was discussion about the streaming the meetings. I know it was about 15 years ago. I remember Law DeBuckle many times suggesting to do live camera and broadcast the council meetings when they were at City Hall. Kind of ironic, we end up getting into a disaster like we're in now, where now it's, we're doing it. But questions I have with that is, I understand that this is now because we're in the COVID times, but when City Hall chambers do open, is this something that we would just keep on doing? Because I suspect that chambers will be opening soon. I don't think that this is going to be going on long myself. And I'm going to assume that we're going to keep them. I don't know. Can anybody tell me if this is something that once this whole COVID thing and everybody's allowed to go up to City Hall, including residents, are going to continue to stream?
Yes, Mr. Sturgeon. So the idea is that hopefully we will all be together soon in City Hall, meaning both the elected officials and the residents who want to and feel comfortable coming up to our meetings again. However, we as the council would like to move forward with streaming our meetings for forever, as far as we're concerned, so that people who do not have the ability to come up to a meeting, or perhaps have other things going on but would like to catch up and watch to see what's happening in city government, that those will be options available to them through this streaming feature. So the streaming in no way replaces the ability for our residents to come up to our meetings. It's supposed to enhance the ability for more of our residents to be able to participate in local government at their leisure and when they're able to do so.
Okay. And also, I don't know if it was, I think it might have been mentioned years ago, maybe possibly talking to one of the local cable companies and seeing if they would be able to broadcast these meetings through on the public channel. And another thing I was thinking about is you're almost going to have to add to your meetings a time where the public that are at council chambers can speak, and then you're going to have a slot for people that are online can speak. And then I have a concern is, how are you guys going to be able to hear this person? I heard nothing about speakers. and microphones, as far as everybody in the administration and council, and maybe even those in the room would be interested in hearing if somebody online was to ask a question and stuff. So would there be speakers in the room for all to hear and microphones? I didn't hear any discussion in caucus as far as budgeting for anything like that.
Sure. Councilman Glassburn, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, Council President, I believe I might be able to address some of these questions or issues. In terms of live broadcast beyond a stream, to work with television or live radio or something of that ilk, we would have to commit our committee meetings and our council meetings to being at exact times, because television is on continuously. So what most likely would be the outcome of any kind of television would be that we would record our meetings like we are now, and then give them to any kind of television or radio or any other media format like that, so that they could rebroadcast it. But to do it live would probably be too much of a logistical hurdle. As to the microphone question, one of the actual key assets that we have right now is a pretty nice microphone system. And for any of the streaming or additional items that we would integrate into our normal meetings, we would be able to plug just an additional, in effect, microphone into a computer, and that would be would feed into the system just as a council member when they speak in their own microphone. But of course, that would be subject to our clerk being very wise with the mute button.
Would it be possible? Would it be possible to have maybe an overhead speaker so everybody in the room could hear what the person online had to say?
The council chambers right now is equipped with speakers throughout the room. So like when you attend a meeting right now, you're actually hearing supplemented the council members speaking into the microphones, and that's fed through the room. I would imagine that anyone participating remotely would be fed through that same system.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Clerk Mazzarolo, did you want to add anything as well?
I think what Councilman Glassburn said pretty much sums it up. Those would be decisions that council would have to make at the time if they wanted to make it so it's just a streaming with no communication, like a television broadcast, or if they wanted to get people's participation that were watching online or something like that. Those would be discussions that would have to be had down the road, and we'd have to look into the stuff there. But there is technology, and it is possible to do it if that's the route council goes.
Are there any additional comments from our audience today? Seeing no other comments, we will move into legislation.
Legislation on third reading. Ordinance 2020-98, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance amending section 1345.05 of Chapter 1345 of the Building Code entitled Standards for Private Residential Pools to incorporate standards established by the International Code Council for Pools, Spas, and Hot Tubs installed at residential properties.
Madam President,
Councilwoman Williamson.
I move for the adoption and ask for second.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2020-98 made by Councilwoman Williamson, seconded by Councilman Limpert. Roll call, please.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-98 is adopted with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance 2020-99, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance amending and reestablishing section 1359.09 of Chapter 1359 of the Building Code entitled Maintenance of Unoccupied Commercial Buildings in order to establish the appeal process from an order of the Building Commissioner.
Madam President, I move for the adoption of ordinance 2020-99 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2020-99 made by Councilwoman Williamson, seconded by Councilman Limpert. Roll call, please.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Ms. Seaman, Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn.
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-99 is adopted with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance 2020-100, introduced by Councilman Schuman. An ordinance amending the traffic control file of the City of North Olmsted to remove the no parking signs on Charles Road.
Madam President,
Madam
Councilman Schuman.
I'd like to move for adoption of 2020-100. Ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2020-100 made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Limpert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman,
I vote yes, with comment, please. I want to thank Chuck, and I also want to thank Renee in safety and Don Glauner. You guys remember him? He made a lot of phone calls and did a lot of hustling for me to get this done. Thank you.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021 is adopted with a vote of 7-0.
Legislation on second reading. Ordinance 2020-101, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance to make and transfer appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the City of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency as amended.
Madam President,
Councilman Schuman.
I'd like to move for this suspension of rules requiring 3 readings. This was heard in committee. It was just brilliantly reported out on, and was discussed, even parts of it were discussed in committee of the whole, and I would ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert.
Yes.
The motion passes with a vote of 7-0. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address council regarding ordinance 2020-101, please do so now.
Madam President,
Councilman Schuman.
seeing none, I move for adoption. Ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2020-101 made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman. Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-101 is adopted with a vote of 7-0.
Resolution 2020-102, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. A resolution directing the fiscal officer of Cuyahoga County to pay to the city of North Olmsted, Ohio, during the year 2021, all money due and owing said city from any collection source. Ordinance 2020-103, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed 1,415,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to provide funds to pay part of the city's portion of the cost of improving Brook Park Road between certain termini in cooperation with the Department of Transportation of the State of Ohio by grading, draining, curbing, reconstructing, and rehabilitating the pavement base, and adjusting, constructing, and reconstructing catch basins, curbs, and curb ramps, manholes, and utility valves and monument boxes where necessary, repairing the surface and resurfacing and providing decorative lighting and landscaping in each case together with necessary appurtenances and work incidental thereto. Resolution 2020-104, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. A resolution authorizing the mayor or director of public service to advertise for bids for the award of a contract to purchase concrete materials and related supplies for the year 2021 as detailed in the specifications on file with the engineer, and authorizing the mayor, following approval of the Board of Control, to contract for the same with the lowest and best bidder. Resolution 2020-105, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. A resolution authorizing the mayor to purchase computer products, including desktops, from CDW Government LLC at a cost of $47,886.55 through the state purchase program, and further authorizing the mayor to execute all documents necessary to effectuate such purchase and declaring an emergency.
Madam President,
Councilman Kelly.
at this time, I move to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings as this was heard in committee and is time sensitive, and I ask for a second.
Motion to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings made by Councilman Kelly, seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman? Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
The motion passes with a vote of 7-0. If there is anyone in the audience who would like to address council regarding resolution 2020-105, please do so now.
Madam President,
Councilman Kelly.
seeing and hearing none, I move for the adoption of ordinance 2020-105 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt a resolution 2020-105 made by Councilman Kelly, seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Resolution 2020-105 is adopted with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance 2020-106, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance amending and reestablishing Chapter 167.99 of the Administrative Code entitled Composition and Organization of the Department of Human Resources in order to implement organizational changes within the department and to create the new position of Building Department Coordinator and declaring an emergency as amended. Councilwoman
mic's off.
Williamson?
Councilwoman Williamson.
Really? Sorry about that. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings as this ordinance was discussed in committee and is necessary in order to implement operational changes in the building department. And I ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings made by Councilwoman Williamson, seconded by Councilman Limpert. Roll call, please.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Ms. Seaman, Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Schuman.
Yes.
That motion passes with a vote of 7-0. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address council regarding ordinance 2020-106, please do so now.
Madam President, seeing none, I'd like to make a motion for the adoption of ordinance 2020-106 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2020-106 made by Councilwoman Williamson, seconded by Councilman Lippert. Roll call, please.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Ms. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-106 is adopted with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance 2020-107, introduced by Mayor Kennedy. An ordinance to establish the positions of Division of Building Coordinator, full-time and part-time, and corresponding compensation for each, and otherwise restate the compensation rates and descriptions for various administrative and legislative personnel for the years 2018, 2019, and 2020, and declaring an emergency.
Madam President,
Councilman Schuman.
I'd like to move that we suspend the rule requiring 3 readings. This was discussed in committee, and it is tied to the 2020-106. Ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Seaman.
Yes.
The motion passes with a vote of 7-0. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address council regarding ordinance 2020-107, please do so now.
Madam President,
Councilman Schuman.
hearing none, I move for adoption.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2020-107 made by Councilman Schuman, seconded by Councilman Broussard. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Broussard,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Ms. Seaman.
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-107 is adopted with a vote of 7-0.
Legislation on first reading. Resolution 2020-108, a resolution to accept a donation of patio pavers and furniture from the mayor, Kevin M. Kennedy, for use by the city of North Olmsted.
Madam President,
Mayor.
introduce, place on first reading.
Ordinance 2020-109, an ordinance amending and reestablishing Section 161.01 of Chapter 161 of the Administrative Code entitled Non-Bargaining Unit Employee Benefits in order to adjust funeral leave benefits.
Madam President,
Mayor.
introduce, place on first reading.
Resolution 2020-110, a resolution approving of and authorizing the mayor to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with Ohio Council 8, Local 2681 of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, AFL-CIO, for the city service workers for the period January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2023.
Madam President,
Mayor.
introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2020-111, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Planning and Community Development to make application to the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, on behalf of the City of North Olmsted for funding for safety-related improvements to Clegg Road, and further authorizing funds for the required local match, and further authorizing the mayor to accept the grant if awarded and execute a contract for the same, and declaring an emergency.
Madam President,
Mayor.
introduce and place on first reading.
Thank you. And looking to schedule council committee meetings. A public hearing is scheduled for October 13th at 7 p.m. to hear public comments on Ordinance 2020-77, amending Section 1135.02 accessory uses regarding lot setback requirements for animal shelters used for chickens. And following that will be EZD. Councilwoman Williamson.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to schedule a Building, Zoning, and Development Committee meeting at 7:15 on October 13th to discuss Ordinance 2020-77. And I would ask that the Law Director, Planning Director, and any other person deemed necessary attend this meeting. And I would also like to schedule a separate meeting on Wednesday, October 21st at 7 p.m. to further discuss ordinance numbers 2020-78 and 79. If possible, if council could have any additional questions to our council clerk by this Friday, it would be appreciated. This way he can get it to the directors and we could have timely responses for our meeting. Thank you.
And Councilman Limpert, scheduling for
Thank you, Madam
the.
President. Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to schedule a Streets and Transportation Committee meeting on October 13th at 7:30 to address Resolution 2020-111, and I would ask that the Planning Director be present.
Thank you. And Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to schedule a Recreation, Public Parks and Buildings Committee at 8 p.m. on October 13th and ask the mayor to be there, please.
Thank you. And Councilman Schuman on Tuesday, October 20th.
I'd like to schedule a Finance Committee meeting for 7:30, the 20th, and we'll be discussing 2020-109, 2020-110, and I would ask that Director Gallo be there. Thank you.
Thank you. And with the agenda being completed and there being no further business to come before council, this meeting of October 6, 2020 is adjourned at 8:54 p.m.